Hello, friends. Welcome back to the While We're Waiting Hope After Child Loss podcast. I'm Jill Sullivan, your host and one of the co-founders of the While We're Waiting ministry. This is a podcast of stories of devastating loss and grief and heartbreak and struggle, and stories of hope and healing and faith and, yes, even joy. Underlying every conversation is the hope we have in Jesus Christ, which makes it possible to not just survive the loss of a child, but to live well while we're waiting to see them again in heaven one day. You can learn more about our ministry and the free bereaved parent retreats we host by visiting our website at www.whilewe'rewaiting.org. Welcome to episode number 222. I'm so pleased to introduce you to my new friends, Billy and Julie Melton, today. We have not had the opportunity to meet in person, but we have some wonderful mutual friends. And we also have a lot in common, as you'll hear as they share the story of their beautiful Juliana with us. I believe you'll be encouraged by their insights in today's episode, and I hope you'll come back next week as we broaden our conversation to address a wide variety of issues faced by bereaved parents. Hi, Billy and Julie. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Hey, Jill, thank you so much for having us today. We are so grateful for the While You're Waiting ministry that you and Brad started years ago. What a blessing.
Well, thank you. I have been really looking forward to meeting you guys, even though it's through the microphone here. And I am excited about giving you all the opportunity to share your story. But first of all, would you tell the listeners a little bit about yourselves? Tell us where you're from and what life is like for you there.
Well, Jill, God has blessed us with 38 years of life together in marriage, most of it in Greensboro, North Carolina, where we currently live and raised our family. Through it all, we've learned what trusting Jesus is all about. He blessed us with two wonderful daughters who love Jesus. We really prayed that they would become all God created them to be. Juliana, our oldest, married Brian in 2015 and went to heaven in 2018. And Jessica, who is 3 years younger, lives in town. She was married in 2020 to Holden. And she's a real blessing. She brightens our day, full of joy, loves well, and has such uncommon wisdom. They are expecting their first baby next month. And we're thrilled to be grandparents.
Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah, good for y'all.
It's such a gift to be able to do life with Jessica and Holden. And we're also blessed to stay connected to Brian, who is remarried, and now they're expecting as well.
Oh, wow. Good.
Yeah, both our girls are daymakers. This is Billy. Hi, Jill.
Uh-huh.
So glad to be
Hi,
here.
Billy.
It's such a gift to have daughters grow up and become the individuals you always prayed they'd become. We've learned so much from them.
My background is in social work, and currently I'm serving in my church and care ministry. Presently, I'm working on some counseling and coaching credentials. I have a real passion to connect individuals to resources and to help them become successful in life and ultimately connect them to the treasure in Jesus.
And I had a career in accounting. Julie and I semi-retired last year, and I'm trying to navigate life in the fourth quarter here. We are currently hosting a church community group. We love walking in the park with our golden retriever rescue dog. And I love yard work, college sports, and reading.
You love yard work. That's interesting.
Yeah. You'll have to come and see our yard sometime. It's beautiful.
Yes. Well, you can come to the refuge out here in Hot Springs and do all the yard work you want. We always have plenty.
Plant all the flowers and,
That's right.
Yeah.
Keep up with the grass. Yeah. Well, we're here today to talk about Juliana. Take a few minutes and tell us about her. Help us get to know her a little bit.
Juliana, well, she was the first child, the first grandchild on both sides of the family, the first everything. She paved the way for all the grandchildren, and she set the bar high. She was an extraordinary individual. My dad always called her his number one. She was like a joyful ambassador. She had a contagious laugh. She was full of life. She had big old blue eyes that sparkled, a redhead. She loved large. She loved people. She loved adventures. She taught us how to really live well and finish well. She excelled in school. She was always looking for opportunities to reach women who needed encouragement. She earned her Girl Scout Gold Award by serving underprivileged girls. She also served in her youth group and went on annual mission trips. A favorite memory of mine was being able to go on a church mission trip together with her to Guatemala. And she was our interpreter of the group. She loved to worship, Jill. She was a gifted dancer. She loved deep conversation. Someone put it, she had the confidence to be herself, which put others at ease. She never met a stranger. She could light up a room. She was really comfortable in any situation, whether she was speaking to a custodian in Spanish or speaking at a dedication of a local community center. She was my biggest fan, cheering me on in my work, career, and in life in the Lord. She called me Java Mama because the girls and I would always go for coffee, and I love coffee so much. And she always said, "The Lord rejoices over you."
Oh, sweet.
And Juliana loved international students. There always seemed to be several of these students in her home countries like Chile, Mexico, Ireland, Australia. In her junior year, she lived in the international dorm at UNC Greensboro, and she made so many friends from all these cultures. Then her senior year, she spent in Toledo, Spain, and she became fluent in Spanish. And again, she had so many international friends. One of the highlights of my life was when Julie and I visited her in Spain. She was our tour guide. She knew all the shopkeepers, and when she would go in the store and spoke Spanish with them, they would just light up. We were so blessed to have her live with us after graduation, and she worked in the school system as an interpreter. But then she felt the call to continue her studies at Regent University in Virginia Beach. She was part of the government program there. She served as president of the graduate students and had many wonderful speaking opportunities. She grew personally so much, and especially in leadership, and she was recognized with a leadership award when she graduated.
While she was at Regent, she met her future husband, a second-year law student. And after they both graduated, they married and settled in Durham, North Carolina. Juliana secured a job with a state representative in public service. She had many aspirations and was very gifted. I call her like she was a world influencer and changer. Juliana was all about bringing people together and looking for commonalities. She was so proud of Brian for passing the bar the first time. And Jill, they had 2.5 years of marriage together. Beautiful years.
Yeah. Her personality sounds a lot like Hannah's growing up. Of course, Hannah did not grow past 17, but I could just see her doing a lot of the same things that Juliana did. Very similar temperaments, it sounds like. So it's fun for me to hear Juliana's story.
And she, I think, was the same age as Hannah, or close in age. Yeah. I mean, if she, So.
Right. Hannah would be 32 now. So
yeah, just a few years, Juliana would have been 34. So
yeah, very close.
Yeah.
Yeah, very close.
That's awesome.
That's very nice.
I feel like they know each other now. I feel like Hannah and
I bet they do.
Getting to know each other now.
Yes. We always talk about at our retreats, we always say, we don't know the theology of this, but it feels like when a group of bereaved parents gets together, wouldn't it be just like God to allow their children to be together in heaven? And like I said, we don't know if that happens or not, but it just seems like something God would do. And who knows, that could be happening right now.
Yeah,
with Hannah and Juliana in heaven.
And it talks about part of the great cloud of witnesses. So,
that's right.
We can consider that.
That's right. Yeah. So it's a wonderful thought. I love to think that way.
Amen.
Yeah. So Juliana is a very beautiful name. Is there a story behind how you chose that name for her?
Well, Jill, God showed us that this would be her name. We didn't really find out that we were going to have a girl, but it said if we have a girl, this would be her name. And Julie and Anna are family names. So we combined Julie and Anna. It's very unique, like Juliana was.
Yeah.
It means youthful. And Juliana was so youthful in spirit and in every way. She was a light for Jesus.
Yeah. Beautiful name for a beautiful girl. So, at what point did you realize that there was something going on with Juliana medically?
Well, Jill, she had been experiencing frequent headaches and nausea. And we received a call one October night in 2016 that would change all of our lives forever.
Mm.
Our son-in-law, Brian, called us and said they found something concerning in her MRI, and they were headed to Duke emergency room, which was about an hour away from us. And they lived in Durham at the time, the Triangle, Durham, Raleigh area.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
called Billy and Jessica, and we gathered our belongings and headed over to Duke ER. During that long, long hour full of unknowns, we prayed. The Holy Spirit really gave us a peace. We called our family and our close friends, and we knew that they would be in prayer because they love Juliana and they love the Lord.
Mm.
After a long night, she was finally admitted to Duke Hospital. God knew all the details. Juliana and Brian lived nearby, which, has some of the best medical care in the country. And he orchestrated all of the steps the following days. The hospital neurologist connected us to a world-famous surgeon who recommended immediate surgery.
Mm.
And although it seemed like weeks, the next day Juliana had successful brain surgery to remove a large tumor. And amazingly, she was discharged the following evening.
Wow.
Going through the early stages of the recovery process, you would never have known she'd even gone through this incredible journey or was even in pain. She was the sweetest patient. She was such a joy to be around.
So, again, a similar story to Hannah's,
Yes.
And even the way she responded to her surgery and her recovery and all of that. So, how long did it take before you received a diagnosis?
Well, Jill, about 3 weeks after her surgery, we went in for a follow-up to meet with the oncologist and the radiologist, both of those teams.
Mm-hmm.
And we bonded quickly with these incredibly caring professionals. And we were blessed to be, invited to come with Brian and Juliana.
Yeah.
Although we were all in shock. Initially, they told us that it would be a very, very long road and very invasive treatment.
Mm.
They said it was serious and they told us the grade, but they focused on the present. And that's exactly what Juliana always did. And so we kind of took her lead. We did too. She trusted her Savior, and she was really full of peace about the future. We were really all full of hope, Jill.
Yeah. At that time, did they give you a prognosis?
Well, I'll never forget the day Brian and Juliana came to see me at school where I was working. They wanted to share with each of us individually that the doctors had changed the treatment plan. We were all thanking him for his provision because of her genetic markings. They felt that the new plan was less invasive and that she could continue on living life, somewhat normal, life to the fullest, whatever that looked like at the time.
Right.
Over this next 16 months, Juliana faced her brain tumor treatment journey with grace and courage. She never wavered. She trusted Jesus in every detail, and she shared Jesus and her life with all those around her in the hospital. Juliana chose life, and we responded likewise. She was always thankful and always grateful, always interested in others, even when she was in pain and suffering.
Well, Jill, we, during those months and many emergency room visits, we saw and celebrated miracles along the way. She had a second tumor emerge, but we saw God's miraculous healings in that. The Duke community, again, was remarkable and attentive in their care. They kind of became like family, which you can relate to that. It was such an encouragement to all of us, but ultimately ultimately giving God the glory, which we had many conversations with the medical team about that.
And then during her last month, she was in and out of intensive care. And it was very difficult for me as a father to see her in such pain and suffering. I would sing to her through the nights when we couldn't sleep and tried to make her comfortable. I just couldn't take the pain away. She never complained, though, and she was always more concerned for other people. She was such an encouragement. Brian, Julie, and Jessica and I, we were just grateful to be part daily of her care. It was such an honor and a privilege, Jill, to be with her. She was such an inspiration and joy to be with. And then the last week, we brought her home, and it was a privilege for the four of us to be together with Juliana her last week at home. Juliana went peacefully to be with Jesus on Valentine's Day, 2018.
And we had hospice care too at home, so that was really a special time too to have that care.
Sure. I always say that it is a hard and holy privilege to walk your child home like that. We had that opportunity as well, and wow, hard, so hard, harder than anything you can imagine. But there's a holiness to it. There's a sacredness,
Yes.
and it is a privilege, like you said.
Yeah. Somebody came the last couple of days. They said that this is the time to invite people to come and say their goodbyes. And one girl came and she said, "This is such a sacred space, such a holy space," and they just felt it, when they came in to pray over her. And we, we had communion that night, the night before she went to be with the Lord, or the night. And there's so many things we could share. I wish we had hours and hours and days. But
yeah. What were your conversations with God like during those 16 months that Juliana battled cancer?
I mean, I think the biggest thing I feel like was that I remember is just attending to what was at hand, just responding to her needs. And the time I was with her, the precious, sweet time, I was with her, which was a lot of the time, Brian just welcomed the family in to help, we kind of partnered in care. Her favorite devotional was Jesus Calling. So we would read that together. She loved different types of food and she loved conversation. So we would cook for her. We still had sweet times together. Looking back, I think about all the trips that God allowed her to be able to go on, which we were a part of that, some of that. She and her sister, Jessica, they were best of friends. They were able to go on a trip together to a friend of Juliana's from graduate school, got married. And so God just allowed that. And we never really thought about worry or not trusting him, because we knew that she was really belonged to him. But she had always, she's really true to her name, because she'd always just focused on the present right then in the moment. We had some hard conversations, some really deep conversations about what God was doing.
And we didn't look too far ahead. We were looking day to day. I mean, we were just trusting God for healing day to day. And he did. He healed her through many stages. And then he ultimately healed her when he took her to heaven. It wasn't exactly what we wanted in any way or expected, but we never gave up hope that God was in control. And, Juliana didn't curse God and we didn't curse God. This was part of her journey, and he knew it from the time that she was in the womb. And
That's right.
So we were privileged, like you said, to walk with her during this time. And I think for me, it wasn't until after she actually passed that some of the conversations with God got a lot more difficult.
Yeah. Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Well, I'd say our grief has definitely evolved over time. In the beginning, we kept saying, "This can't be real. This can't be real." But deep down, it made us want to know more about heaven. We'd never studied about heaven. I don't know that I'd been that interested. We'd heard stories about angels and, clouds and all that, but we realized as we dug in, there's much more to that. And if God's going to have us spend eternity there, it's certainly something we need to learn about. If she's there, when your loved ones go there, you definitely want to know more about it.
Mm-hmm.
So we began to place our grief towards an eternal perspective.
Yeah.
And we found out that, we don't grieve as other people that don't have hope grieve. grief is unique to each individual. This is, some of the advice that we could give to people.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Julie, how do you feel like your grief has evolved over the last 6.5 years?
Well, I feel like that we, again, our grief is unique to each individual. And I feel like that I'm not alone. I feel like grief is hard work. And sometimes I've had to give my self permission to lay it down.
Yeah, that's right.
Take a break is how I would say it. Give myself grace, and find something. One of the things that's really helped me is find something that's joyful, even in the sadness, because I have joy and sorrow all the time together.
Yes.
And people, if they saw me, they would think that I have so much joy, but I still am carrying around that sorrow because this is not our home.
That's right. That's right. And I think people are surprised to discover that joy and sorrow can coexist.
Yes.
And do coexist.
Yes.
My friends Ron and Nan Deal talk about there's two tracks. It's like rails. You can have a rail of joy and a rail of grief, and they go together. And we carry both of them throughout our lives. And I think realizing that really helps in the grief journey for sure.
And one of the things too that's really helped us, Jill, is learning to serve. It's been a really great way to, to give back, and for us to grieve well is to serve. And we can talk about what that looks like, but it's also helpful to be around people that get it. That get it, like you.
Yeah.
I think we yearn for that, to be around people. Even the authors that we read, we wanted to read books from people that had experienced loss like this,
right?
And to be in person with people that were walking through it was so valuable to us.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I just remember having all kinds of emotions, just emotions I didn't even know I had.
Yeah.
The grieving, the wailing, the crying constantly for years. I still cry a lot of times.
Sure.
Because it just shows, when you grieve deeply, if you love deeply, you grieve deeply.
That's right.
We know that saying, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. And it's true. I believe that.
Yeah. And as a man, I felt like I had this rush of emotions that I really didn't know before.
Yeah.
Crying, and anger, and frustration, and feeling like I didn't provide protection for her. All these things. And, the only place I could turn to was God. And it was not a linear process by any means. It was start and stop. And I relied so much on Julie in the early days because I didn't want to read. But yet I needed stuff in my soul. And she often read the Bible to me, read devotional, read parts of books. So that really soothed my soul when I was so bound up with all these emotions that I'd really never experienced before. So I just give her so much credit for being there with me, that we could walk through this together.
Absolutely. Well, and I appreciate you sharing that from a dad's perspective. I think sometimes dads feel like they have to be tough and strong and not show their emotions, but it sounds like you really dealt with that in a good way.
Well, I couldn't watch a Hallmark movie without crying.
Right.
And we began to see that a lot of loss in the world. I don't know before if our eyes were just glossed over and we were so consumed with ourselves, but God really opened our heart to see the suffering around us and just the way other people were having. Life is hard, and we need each other. We need the Lord.
Absolutely. So what advice would you give to someone who is just starting this journey? Maybe it's just been a few weeks or a few months since their child went to heaven. What advice might you give them?
Well, I would probably, like I had mentioned before about myself, I would encourage those individuals to find something that brings them joy, even in their sadness, because they are going to be sad. So just finding something that brings them joy, and doing something for themselves, self-care. has been,
Mhm.
because, we're holistic beings, Jill. And so, and, grief affects every aspect of our lives. We felt like that every single area of our lives. So I would just encourage them to,
Yeah.
and give themselves grace. One of the things that I did that was really helpful was I journaled. And that was something that was more of, it was, spiritual, but it was also part of the healing process for me. And then one of the other things we did was we took walks every day,
Yeah.
short walks, and got
Mhm.
into kind of a routine.
Yeah. But Jill, that first year, we gave ourselves permission to cancel social dates at the
Yeah.
last minute if we couldn't handle it. Because in a sense, it's like time changed. It's like our world stopped and everybody else was going forward.
Yeah.
And so sometimes being in these social settings where things were light and frivolous, it was too much. And we just couldn't handle it. And so, a couple of times we did. We got there and we were like, I don't think we can handle this. Let's, make a graceful exit.
Yeah.
So it was a process.
I think that's great advice about saying no to some social interactions,
Mhm.
because for me, I had the same experience. And I think many bereaved parents do. It's hard to be in a group where the conversation is frivolous and, your mind is filled with such weighty things that you just can't keep up the facade of normalcy, or at least that's the way I felt.
Well, and we found that, even when we went to the grocery store and talked to people, we wanted to get right into serious issues. And
Yeah.
we made a connection with people that a lot of times the people you think you'll make a connection with, you don't, because maybe they haven't experienced loss. But the people you would never expect, suddenly you have this deep connection because they too have experiences. And you have a platform now where you have this boldness for the Lord, because if you face this, I mean, that's the final fear, death. And,
Yeah.
if you realize that death is not the end, that's a powerful thing.
Yes, it is. Good advice for a newly bereaved parent. Thank you all. This concludes the first part of my conversation with Billy and Julie Melton. Be sure to come back next week as we extend our discussion to include a wide range of issues faced by bereaved parents and talk about the ministry they founded to support bereaved parents in the Greensboro, North Carolina area. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to sharing the rest of our chat with you next Wednesday.